friends. Welcome back to English Podcast Flow. Wow, Frank, today's topic is a heavy one, but I think it's so important.
Hey everyone. Yeah, Alice and I were preparing for this episode and we both got really emotional because we've been through so much. You know? Today we're talking about life challenges and how to express those difficult moments in English. This is the kind of conversation where you need the right words because these are real, vulnerable situations where you're opening up to someone you trust.
Exactly. And I think sometimes English learners avoid these conversations because they don't have the vocabulary. But life happens to all of us, right? We go through hard times, we face obstacles, we struggle. And being able to talk about it, especially in a second language, that's actually really powerful because it helps you connect with people on a deeper level and it helps you process what you're going through.
So grab something warm to drink, get comfortable, and let's have this important conversation together.
Before we start, thank you so much for being here. Your support truly means the world to us.
If these conversations are helping you, would you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications? It takes 2 seconds and helps us reach more learners.
And please, leave a like. Every single one helps build this amazing community we're creating together.
We're so grateful. Now, let's talk about life challenges. Alice, I want to start with something that happened to me about 5 years ago that I rarely talk about. I lost my job. Not because I did anything wrong, but the company was downsizing and they let go of about 30 people. And I was one of them. And I remember sitting in my apartment that day, just completely numb, thinking, how am I going to pay rent? How am I going to tell my family? What do I even do now? It was one of the scariest moments of my life because my entire identity was wrapped up in that job. And suddenly it was just gone.
Frank, I had no idea you went through that. How did you even begin to talk about it with people? Because I imagine that's such a vulnerable thing to share, especially when you're feeling so uncertain about your future.
It was incredibly hard. At first, I didn't tell anyone except my closest friend. I remember calling him and saying, I need to talk. Something happened and I don't know what to do. And he just said, come over. Let's talk. And that simple invitation, that opening for me to share without judgment, that's what I needed in that moment. The actual words I used were something like, I'm going through a really tough time right now. I lost my job and I'm honestly terrified about what comes next. I don't have answers. I just needed someone to listen.
That's so honest and raw. And I think that's exactly what people need to hear when they're learning how to express their own struggles. You didn't try to sugarcoat it or pretend everything was fine. You were just real about where you were. And I think that phrase, I'm going through a tough time, is so useful because it opens the door without having to explain everything right away. It gives the other person a chance to say, do you want to talk about it? Or, I'm here if you need me.
Exactly. And the other phrase I used a lot during that time was I'm struggling with. So I would say, I'm struggling with uncertainty right now, or I'm struggling to figure out my next steps. The word struggling is really powerful because it's honest. It says, this is hard for me. I'm not handling it perfectly, and that's okay. It gives you permission to not have everything together.
I love that. And you know what, Frank? I went through something similar, but different. About 3 years ago, I went through a really painful breakup. It was a relationship I thought was going to last forever, and then it just ended. And the hardest part wasn't even the breakup itself. It was the loneliness that came after. I felt like I had built my whole life around this person, and suddenly I had to figure out who I was without them. And I didn't know how to talk about it because in my culture, we don't really talk openly about heartbreak like that. So when friends would ask, how are you? I would just say, I'm fine, even though I was falling apart inside.
That must have been so isolating. What changed? What made you finally open up?
One day, a coworker I wasn't even that close to notice that I seemed off. And she said, Alice, I don't mean to pry, but are you okay? You haven't seemed like yourself lately. And something about the way she asked, it was so gentle and caring that I just broke down and told her everything. I said, honestly, I've been really struggling. I went through a breakup and I feel completely lost. Don't even know who I am anymore without this person in my life. And she just listened. She didn't try to fix it or give me advice. She just said that sounds incredibly painful. I'm so sorry you're going through this. If you ever need to talk, I'm here.
That's exactly what people need to hear. Not solutions, not advice, just I see you, I hear you, and I'm here. And the phrase you used, I don't know who I am anymore. That's so relatable because major life changes do that to us. They shake our sense of identity, and it takes time to rebuild.
Frank, let's talk about how to express different types of challenges because not everything is as dramatic as a job loss or a breakup. Sometimes it's just the weight of everyday stress, like financial pressure or family issues or health concerns. How do you talk about those things?
That's a great point because those ongoing challenges are sometimes harder to talk about than the big dramatic events. With money stress, for example, you might say something like, I've been really stressed about finances lately. Things have been tight, and I'm trying to figure out how to make ends meet. The phrase make ends meet means to have just enough money to pay for your needs. It's a common way to talk about financial struggle without going into too much detail.
Right? And that's important because money is such a sensitive topic. You're being honest that you're struggling without having to share exact numbers or embarrassing details. Another phrase I've heard people use is, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, which means you're using up all your money before you get paid again. It communicates financial stress in a way that people immediately understand.
Exactly. And what about family challenges? That's another area where people struggle to find the right words because family is complicated and personal.
Family challenges are so hard to talk about because there's often guilt or shame attached to them. But I think being honest helps. You might say something like, I'm dealing with some family issues right now that are weighing on me. My relationship with my mom has been really strained and I'm not sure how to fix it. Or if you're caring for an aging parent, you might say, it's been really challenging taking care of my father. I love him, but it's emotionally and physically exhausting.
Those are really good examples because they acknowledge both the difficulty and the complexity of the situation. You're not saying my family is terrible. You're saying the situation is hard, and I'm struggling with it, which is very different. And then there are health challenges, which can be scary to talk about because you're admitting vulnerability in a very real, physical way.
Health is especially difficult because people don't always know what to say. But being direct and honest usually helps. You might say, I've been dealing with some health issues that have been really difficult. I'm undergoing treatment and I'm trying to stay positive, but some days are harder than others. Or if it's mental health, which carries even more stigma, you might say, I've been struggling with my mental health lately. I started seeing a therapist and I'm working through some things, but it's a process.
I'm so glad you brought up mental health because that's an area where language really matters. Being able to say I've been struggling with anxiety, or I'm dealing with depression, or I've been having panic attacks, those phrases normalize something that affects so many people, but that people are afraid to talk about. And the more we use these phrases naturally and without shame, the more we reduce that stigma.
Absolutely. And then there are career challenges beyond just losing a job. Like maybe you're stuck in a job you hate, or you're facing discrimination at work, or you're trying to change careers, but you're scared. How do you express those frustrations?
You might say something like, I'm feeling really unfulfilled in my current job. I know I need to make a change, but I'm scared of the uncertainty that comes with starting over. Or I'm facing some challenges at work that are affecting my mental health. I'm trying to figure out if I should stay and fight or if it's time to move on. These phrases show that you're processing a difficult decision, which is something everyone can relate to.
Okay, so we've talked about how to express challenges, But what about asking for help? Because I think that's even harder for a lot of people, especially if you come from a culture where asking for help is seen as weakness.
You're absolutely right. And this was something I really struggled with during my job loss period. I'm the type of person who's used to being independent and solving my own problems. So admitting that I needed help felt like failure. But eventually I realized that asking for help isn't weakness. It's actually courage. It takes real strength to say, I can't do this alone. And the people who care about you, they want to help. They just need to know what you need.
So what are some ways to ask for help without feeling like you're being a burden?
One way is to be specific about what you need. Instead of just saying I need help, which can feel vague and overwhelming, you say something like, I'm going through a difficult time and I could really use someone to talk to. Would you have time to grab coffee this week? Or I'm struggling financially and I'm wondering if you know anyone who's hiring. I'm actively looking for work and I could use any leads you might have.
I love that because you're being clear and direct, which actually makes it easier for the other person to help. They know exactly what you're asking for. Another phrase I've found helpful is, I hate to ask, but would you be willing to followed by the specific request, like, I hate to ask, but would you be willing to watch my kids for a few hours this weekend? I really need some time to take care of myself and I'm completely overwhelmed.
That's good because the phrase I hate to ask acknowledges that you're aware you're asking for something, which shows respect for the other person's time and energy. But then you follow it with the actual request, which gives them the opportunity to say yes or no. And here's the thing, Alice, most people want to help. They just don't always know how unless you tell them.
That's so true. And sometimes the help you need isn't practical. It's just emotional. You just need someone to listen. And that's okay too. You can say something like, I don't need advice or solutions right now. I just need to vent for a bit. Would you be willing to listen? That's such a clear boundary that lets the other person know you're not expecting them to fix anything. You just need them to be present.
And if you're really struggling and you need professional help, like therapy or counseling, that's also something you can talk about. You might say to a trusted friend, I've been going through a lot and I think I need to talk to someone professional. Have you ever seen a therapist? Do you have any recommendations? This normalizes therapy and also opens up the possibility that your friend might share their own experience, which can be really comforting.
Absolutely. And one more thing about asking for help. If someone offers and you're not ready to accept it, that's okay too. You can say, thank you so much for offering. I really appreciate it. I'm not ready right now, but can I reach out if things change? This acknowledges their kindness without committing to something you're not ready for.
Alice, let's flip this around. What if someone comes to you with a challenge? How do you respond in a way that's supportive and helpful?
This is so important because the wrong response can actually make someone feel worse. The worst thing you can do is minimize their struggle or try to immediately fix it. Phrases like, it could be worse, or just think positive, or everything happens for a reason. Those can feel really dismissive to someone who's in pain.
Absolutely. Those phrases, even though they're meant to be comforting, they often invalidate the person's feelings. They're essentially saying your feelings aren't valid or you shouldn't feel this way, which is the opposite of supportive.
Right? So what should you say instead? First, just acknowledge what they shared. You can say something simple like, that sounds really hard. I'm so sorry you're going through this. Or I can't imagine how difficult this must be for you. Thank you for trusting me enough to share this. These responses validate their experience without trying to fix it or minimize it.
And then you can ask, how can I support you? Or what do you need right now? This gives them agency to tell you what would actually be helpful rather than you guessing or assuming. Maybe they need practical help. Maybe they just need to be heard. Maybe they need space. You won't know unless you ask.
Exactly. And sometimes the best thing you can offer is just your presence. You can say, I don't have the right words, but I want you to know that I'm here for you. Whatever you need, just let me know. This is honest and genuine. You're admitting you don't have all the answers, but you're showing up anyway.
And if someone shares something really serious, like suicidal thoughts or severe mental health struggles, it's okay to express concern and encourage professional help. You might say, "I'm really worried about you." What you're describing sounds like something that would benefit from professional support. Can I help you find a therapist or call a helpline? I care about you and I want to make sure you get the help you need.
That's a really caring way to handle something serious. You're not dismissing their feelings, but you're also recognizing when something is beyond your ability to help and needs professional intervention. And one last thing, Frank, after someone shares something difficult with you, follow up. A few days later, send them a text that says, "I've been thinking about you. How are you doing?" Or just wanted to check in and see how you're feeling today. This shows that you didn't just hear them in that moment and forget about it. You actually care about their ongoing well.
Alice, I want to end with something hopeful because while we've talked a lot about struggles, I think it's important to acknowledge that challenges don't last forever. They're seasons of life, and we move through them. How do you talk about being on the other side of a challenge or in the process of healing?
That's such an important perspective. Frank, you might say something like, "I've been through a really difficult time, but I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel." That phrase means you're still in the challenge, but you can see hope ahead. Or you might say, "It's been a long road, but I'm finally starting to feel like myself again." This acknowledges the difficulty of the journey while celebrating the progress.
And sometimes you want to share what you learned from the challenge. You might say, "Going through that experience was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it taught me so much about my own strength. I'm actually grateful for what I learned, even though I wouldn't want to go through it." Again, this kind of reflection shows growth and resilience.
I love that. And you can also acknowledge that healing isn't linear. You might say, "I have good days and bad days. Some days I feel strong and hopeful, and other days I struggle. But overall, I'm moving in the right direction." This is realistic and honest about the ups and downs of recovery.
Your turn now. Go to the comments and share. What's a challenge you faced or are facing? And how are you getting through it?
This is a safe space. Use the vocabulary we taught today. Practice expressing your struggles in English. And if you read someone else's comment, respond with empathy and support.
We're all in this together. Let's build each other up.
Thank you for being vulnerable with us today. Talking about challenges is never easy, but you're building skills that will help you connect deeply with others.
Remember, your struggles don't define you, but how you talk about them and move through them. That shows your strength. Keep going, keep growing, and we'll see you next time.
We believe in you. Bye, friends!